So today we cover the evolution of a certain animal. Darwin said of this animal and others that those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. Steven Pinker said, how could the process that gave rise to slugs and oak trees and fish produce a creature that can fly to the moon and cross the oceans? Proven to be capable of masterful feats of engineering and almost apocalyptic scales of global devastation. I'm, of course, talking about the harp seal. No, we're talking about humans.
Tell me about a harp seal. Why harps? Do they play the harp? Do they look like harps?
I think the man who discovered them was called Jerry Harp.
Right.
And let's seal that introduction up and let's move on to humans. We're focusing today on the East African Rift Valley, which is referred to as the cradle of mankind and shows in fossil records almost the entirety of human evolution from 6 million years ago to present day. We can't cover the entirety of human evolution in 20 minutes, but we can give it a go. And we're going to start with hominins. So hominins are the group consisting of modern humans, extinct humans, and all our immediate ancestors. And the oldest known of the human ancestors is called the Sahelanthropus shadensis.
I heard anthropus in there.
Yeah, shadensis, rather. And it lived in West Central Africa between 7 and 6 million years ago. It's a possible ancestor to humans and chimpanzees, although this has been disputed. It looks very similar to modern-day gorillas, and there's actually conflicting evidence to whether it walked on two legs due to its length of its femur.
But so this is from evidence from bones that they found, is it?
Yeah, in the cradle in East African Rift Valley. And in a paper in 2023, it discussed that it most likely walked on its knuckles like a modern-day gorilla. And it wasn't until a skeleton was discovered that we got our first evidence of early hominins walking on two legs. It's one of the oldest well-preserved fossils of a hominin. It's 3.2 million years ago, and it was discovered in Ethiopia in 1974. It's a female called Lucy. She was the first Australopithecus afarensis skeleton ever found, and she had a mixture of humane, ape-like characteristics. She had long, dangling arms, but a pelvic spine and foot and leg structure suited to walking upright, like modern-day rugby players, and had the brain the size of a chimpanzee. She was 3.5 feet tall, and it's been proven through her wisdom teeth that she was an adult, which you wouldn't expect to be 3.5 feet tall. But these are tiny, tiny little creatures. I mean, you know.
Yeah. But imagine like living in that society where everyone's very small. I guess like it would mean that you're really good at some things and less good at climbing trees or whatever.
Well, you would be right, but there's another skeleton that was found, Ardipithecus ramidus, which was later called Ardi for short, which had evidence for tree climbing and bipedal movement on two legs up to 4.4 million years ago. So sort of like a very short George of the Jungle, if you remember Brendan Fraser's classic.
So in that time difference, humans got taller, or was this a different species?
This was a different species, and slightly older species, 4.4 million years, whereas Lucy looks more like 3.2 million years.
Right, okay.
So we've got a third of the time,
or
a quarter of the time, actually. So Ardi looked a little bit like a cross between a modern-day gorilla and E.T., if you can imagine that. Incidentally, do you know why she was called Lucy?
Well, I know the name Lucy means light, so I don't know whether
she's 3.5 feet tall. So yeah. You can pick her up.
The beginnings or origins, something like that.
It's a lot less scientific and a lot more wholesome, I think, and that is because the scientists had a celebration on the day that they discovered her, and they played a specific song over and over again. Can you guess what that song is?
Tell me, go on.
It's Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
Amazing. Which is particularly relevant because you get diamonds from that kind of area, I think, as well.
Right.
Potentially, I think around the East African Rift there are diamonds coming up in kimberlites, maybe.
I actually think it's a celebration because, I mean, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was about, I'm pretty sure they were on some kind of drugs.
Something.
So I think it's more to do with that. And it was a celebration. So why not?
I actually had read that this discovery of Lucy was almost by chance. I think they'd been looking for something else, and they all piled back into their jeeps at the end of the day, out wherever they were doing their field work, and drove back a different route, I think, than they normally would, and then saw something potentially sticking out of the sand, and then went and excavated.
An arm, a hand.
Yeah, it's me.
Yeah, a face just poking out the sand. Yeah, that's terrifying. I was surprised they chose the beetles. Can you think of any other artists, like the monkeys or gorillas?
Yeah.
Yeah. The earliest stone tools were around this time as well. So
Okay.
rolling stones.
Yeah. My pop knowledge is awful.
James Blunt.
Yeah.
Elton John. No, that doesn't work. Well, you mull that over.
I'll be thinking for a while.
think that for a while, and we'll come back to it. But anyway, Lucy and the majority of these discoveries, like Ardi, the oldest stone tools and the oldest Homo sapiens, were found in East Africa. So why does East Africa have so many fossils? Well, the East African Rift, or the cradle of mankind, developed in the Miocene, so 22 to 25 million years ago. It's at a divergent plate boundary where you have the African plate and two smaller plates, the Somali and Nubian plate, and they're being pulled apart. And there are highlands in this area created by the rifting, and this rapidly eroding highlands release sediment, fill the valley, and preserve the fossils. Now, at divergent plate boundaries, what also generated, Mark?
Sorry, what was the question?
Good. So volcanoes. It's good to know you're listening.
I'm still pondering on a pot
on a pun for this.
I got nothing, so I'll stop thinking about that and actually engage.
What about like Cliff Richard or something? Something, man. Just chuck something out there, man.
Like Pink Floyd? No, that doesn't work. Coldplay?
Fleetwood Mac.
All right, I'll give up.
No, keep going. I'll just keep talking. I'll keep talking. So anyway, divergent plate boundaries, you get volcanoes.
Yeah.
Volcanoes generates
magma and lava.
Lava, exactly. But also generates a very fine byproduct, which is ash, Arthur ash. And this, when it erupts, sprinkles over the valley. And because it's very fine, it preserves the fossils, buries them and preserves them.
So a bit like Pompeii then?
Very much like Pompeii. And you can see the entirety of human evolution from the system of rift valleys. But at some point, we evolved into Homo sapiens. And Homo sapiens means, you're good at Latin?
Wise man.
Wise man, exactly. From a very wise man. It was long believed that we came from East Africa. But fossil evidence shows that we descended from several different populations across Africa in rainforests, deserts, grasslands. The oldest Homo sapien skull found was in the Omo Valley in Ethiopia, which is 230,000 years old. But Homo sapiens may be up to 1 million years old.
Do you know at what point you start calling them Homo sapiens?
Well, I assume about 1 million years ago.
But like, why do we decide at that point that these are Homo sapiens as opposed to another ancestor? Do you know what I mean? Or another species?
I could be wrong here, but maybe it's because of the wise man. I believe some of the cognitive revolutions that occurred, we show evidence of a big development in our brain capacity about 200,000 years ago, maybe more. So possibly it's to do with that.
Okay.
Possibly it's to do with bipedal movement.
Yeah, so some kind of change.
Yeah. Incidentally, so Homo sapiens moved to 1 million years old, but we branched from Homo sapiens split. So the species split into Neanderthals and Homo sapiens by 800,000 years ago. There's a Nature paper last month that read that the tens of thousands of years ago, modern humans, so Homo sapiens, migrated out of Africa, interbred with Neanderthals in the Middle East, which meant that modern populations outside of Africa carry at least 2 to 3% Neanderthal ancestry in their genomes.
Oh, interesting. Just in that area, or like all Homo sapiens, was it?
No, I think the idea was that there was interbreeding in the Middle East.
Okay.
Which then expanded across the globe.
Right. Yeah.
So I'd imagine particularly in Europe, a lot of modern humans have Neanderthal ancestry DNA. I mean, I would say mine's in my calves, definitely not my head. I learned on QI that apparently if you were to shave a Neanderthal, you wouldn't really notice the difference between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. You'd be able to tell the difference, which is kind of interesting.
Perhaps why they interbred. It was a shaved Neanderthal, perhaps.
Yeah, it was a skin fade with a 2, like, with an 8 on top. So anyway, so Homo sapiens were originally believed to be in small, isolated bands, but research suggests that hunter-gatherer populations across Africa have been interacting with each other for up to at least 120,000 years, even though they're on different ends of the continents. And this was identified from them having very similar cultures, even similar musical instruments, for example, and in particular, ostrich shell beads for decoration, which has been found in East and Southern Africa, which is dated using strontium isotopes to about 50,000 years ago. So there seems to be a lot of sharing going on. And archaeologists have shown that 200,000 years ago, there was the sharing or transportation of obsidian, which, as we've said before, is a volcanic glass. And these were used for stone tools. And this has been shared across 160 kilometers over Eastern Africa. So this is vast transportation. But importantly, these networks signify a shift in reasoning powers, which is referred to as cognitive revolutions. Now, around 70,000 years ago, we started to show a bit more complex behavior, which is referred to as the Paleolithic cognitive revolution. Now, human brains are actually quite large for their bodies. We have about 2 to 3% our body size. Chimpanzees have a brain a third of the size of ours. And it's not to say that early Homo sapiens or early human ancestors were stupid. You know, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, all these developed tools and fire, primitive communication. I think fire stemmed from about maybe 1 million years ago, because you can see in sort of burnt plants and ash that's been recorded in caves. So that's kind of interesting.
Before humans knew how to make fire, it must have been such a crazy phenomenon to witness. Because I'm sure
natural, wouldn't it? Wildfires and lightning strikes.
Yeah.
I guess they would attribute it to some kind of god, if they had gods by then, or worship. I mean, well, to be honest, actually, this cognitive revolution proves that there was the emergence of symbolic thinking, religion, and art that occurred during that sort of 200,000 years onwards. So obviously, early hominids could produce fire and primitive communication. But what happened was there was this development of not just words, but ideas. And this came with the development of complex language. So you couldn't just communicate just general. It had to be describing dreams.
Yeah. Okay.
And stories. But most importantly, there was the development of hierarchies and cooperation. So we had social structures, which had leaders and hunters, delegations, which all developed into this shared ideas pot of cognitive development.
It's interesting. So there's kind of like a point in the hominids evolution where there just seems to be like this turning point, because this is really significant, right? It's not just a change in the way that we walk or some other kind of physical characteristic. Like it's a real big, like, here it begins.
Yeah, it sort of happened in bursts. I mean, there were multiple cognitive revolutions. The Paleolithic one is this one that seems to be the biggest development, but there were increases in brain sizes over the past 2 million years rather than just 70,000 years onwards. But the Paleolithic one...
Yeah, I was going to ask what that is.
That's 70,000 years ago. That's when we started to develop these proper social hierarchies.
Right.
So how did this change occur? What led to this expansion of our brain size? Well, because, early hominids had the same size as chimpanzees, basically. So a third of the size they are now. So they tripled in size over 2 million years. So it could have been a genetic mutation, which we just got lucky. Our brains got a little boost. Another theory is that the shared cultural and social learnings that were going on compounded and snowballed, which led to brain development. We also had a development of nutrition. So omega-3, a lot of fish, and also fire. So you could cook things rather than eat them raw.
Okay.
But there was also numerous papers referring to altering climates and environments, the rapid changing of environments that led to this sort of forced adaptation, which drove the cognitive revolution. And an example is this: there's a paper in 2014 in Quaternary Science Reviews, which showed that the continual rifting of East Africa produced lots of deep lakes, so Lake Victoria being one of them. And these lakes are renowned for rapid precipitation and evaporation. So periods of aridity followed by large downpours, constantly changing environments. And this correlates with a brain expansion event that happened about 1.8 million years ago. And so maybe there's a similar mechanism that happened around 70,000 years ago. And in fact...
Just on that, I don't understand how changes in the climate could cause, or do they not suggest how the two are linked? They're just saying these two things happened at the same time.
I think they're linked because it led to the adaptation of us having to innovate It's like you look at world wars and the technical developments that occurred during those were massively compounded by the necessity to adapt during wars. I think the same thing happened naturally for us in periods of unpredictable climates and environments. But 70,000 years ago, there could have been a similar mechanism. There's evidence that there's long-term drying trend in East Africa. It's been punctuated by sort of alternating periods or short episodes of extreme humidity, so lots of moisture in the air, and extreme aridity, so lack of moisture. So it created like an adapt or die revolution.
Yeah.
I think the last point there is very compelling, but obviously it's probably a combination of all these factors, as it
always is.
As science so often is. Sure, for a scientific paper, I mean, that's what you'd say. Maybe a combination of all these factors.
And then you don't upset anyone.
Exactly, exactly. And then you finish by saying this is a critical preliminary step in the understanding of human evolution.
With huge ramifications.
Yeah, but future research is needed.
Yeah. Textbook.
It's classic. We published some papers in our time. So let's finish with a bit of what in the world.
Yes, please.
So, have you read *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari?
I have not.
Recommend highly. Very good. And if anyone has read it, which is a worldwide bestseller and millions of copies sold, so I'm sure people have read it, but it mentions something called the Dunbar number. And this is the theoretical limit of the number of social relationships a person can maintain. That's close relationships. So foragers would band together, but at a certain number, communication starts to break down. Homo sapiens can't form any more meaningful close relationships. So basically you can't trust strangers beyond this number. Any ideas what the number is?
I'm going to guess 120.
You're actually right on the money. So anthropologist Robin Dunbar created the Dunbar number, obviously. Not the Robin number, the Dunbar number, which is around 150.
Okay.
Incidentally, I mean, they chose a statistic in the book, but incidentally, that's the average number of people, of friends people have on Facebook, which seems...
Interesting.
I don't know how they got that number, because I know there's probably thousands, millions of accounts that are either dummy accounts, bots, or their accounts are like my mum, and she'd follow 3 people, and it would be my dad, my sister, and me.
Yeah.
And the book was written a few years ago, and Facebook is becoming less and less popular.
Yeah. I wonder whether that number, so because I guess what they're saying is like this is a kind of an external factor when communication breaks down, but I wonder whether that number is affected at all by COVID. Because didn't they say that like during COVID, like kind of our ability for social interactions and communications changed quite significantly, and so I wonder whether that number would have taken a bit of a dip or a reduction.
Do you think it made people more reflective of people close to them and realised that most of the friends they have on Facebook aren't really friends?
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah. I don't know.
And search for meaning.
Interesting one. Yes, indeed. Imagine if they had social media as when Homo sapiens began. I don't know what it would be called.
Lol. With this one, it's a bloke, a hairy bloke like that, sitting there eating some raw fish.
Yeah. I don't know what it'd be. I guess it wouldn't be Facebook, right? Because they wouldn't know what a book is. It's like face tablet or face. I don't know.
I think Flintstagram. So there we are. So humans evolved from pockets in Africa, and it seems that the rifting of East Africa, the geology and the climate sped up the evolution of humans. So
and preserved it so that we could go and read it like a book.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Geology clearly is at the core of everything.
Oh, beautiful way to end. Thank you so much for all your research on that.
No, thank you for being here and asking questions. Thanks everyone for listening as well. Join us again next time.
Bye.